All right, everyone. I'm so sorry. We had some technical difficulties. We just were notified that our screen wasn't actually showing. Our apologies. What we'll go ahead and do, if y'all are willing to stay on, we'll go ahead and start from the top again with our screen fully visible. And yeah, looks like we lost some people, but we'll go ahead and do that just because no one could actually see anything. So I'll let Ben go ahead and start it off. We'll still have our regular Q&A at the end if y'all would like to stay and participate in that.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Sorry again about that, that situation. Well, I'm just going to start all over again, guys. I, again, deeply apologize for that inconvenience, and, hopefully, you guys can hang in there. All right. So, again, the intake form of what we're trying to do is, the whole process of the intake form is that it's going to save you time, right? Instead of just adding a matter, then adding a name, then linking them together, that technically right there is 3 steps, right? At any given point, the intake form is going to facilitate all that so you can go and do all of it at once. So, again, as I was saying, I don't know if most of you are using this properly as far as the intake is concerned, the intake form, but if you're just adding a matter, by going into your matters icon and then hitting add and adding 1 matter, and then following through after you add the matter, right, you would add the name, and then after that you would come into your link names tab and add a link to link that particular name that you just created into the matter. So that technically is 3 steps. If you were to add more names, okay, and link more names, then you have to create those name records and then link them as well. So technically speaking, that would be another step. So instead of having to do that all in different screens and add them and linking them, that's manually, that would take 7, 9 steps depending on how many names you want to link. What the intake does is it'll facilitate all that and it'll expedite that process all in 1 step. Okay? So if you click on the intake form here, of course, as a trainer, I have all the different practice areas here, but for this particular instance, I'm going to use the Abacus family, as in the family law, divorce case intake form. So when you go in, you will have the information, the section for your case. And this happens for each practice area, right? At the top, you're going to have the case information, then obviously the names that you're trying to link as far as the client. As a client, also you can go down the line here, and you'll be able to then enter in the opposing party's information, if that's what it is, that's the name that you're linking, and then, of course, the opposing counsel. So in this particular example of the family law, as you're linking the names or adding the names, as you're filling in the name record, you're also creating a link. The overall effect is that at the end of it, everything's going to be, every name that you're creating is going to be already linked to the matter. So then in itself, you're cutting the process in half, as opposed to having to add it, then link it, right? All in here, you're adding it, as you're adding it, and you're entering the information, you're linking it right away, okay? The other advantage of the intake form is what I like to call the events that you can link for calendar events. In this process, right, just to give you an example, when we're referring to, let's say, the subsequent action items that need to be taken care of during, as far as the intake process is concerned, you can just simply add the individuals that need to handle that, right? This is the data entry part of it, but someone after the fact, right, will have to handle maybe who's entering, opening up the file or opening up the billing account, right? In the billing maintenance section of the invoice, you have to determine how how these are going to get billed to the client. Are they standard rates? Are they non-standard rates that you're billing, right, for the timekeepers? After that, you're talking about maybe someone doing a confirmation letter or drafting a fee contract, right? So all these things need to happen. So one part of the intake form that is very useful is that you can actually assign who is to see this under this section in the WHO code for the responsible attorney. So maybe you want the events to be calendared to be seen by the attorney, by the paralegal, by the secretary, and by the billing person. Okay, all of that can be handled and taken care of, okay, through this section by just simply listing them. Okay, you just have to go in the lookup, and all of your end users should be available with their initials, and you can just add them on here. You can add up to 4 individuals. If you want more than 4 individuals to be aware that this intake form is being opened, then you need to create what we call a work group. So 4 more, you're going to need a work group. Other than that, you can list each one of them here. Again, the end product of the intake form is that all the linking is going to be done for whatever name records you're entering, and you can always see it by just reading each one of the information you're entering for that name. Enter the information that's for the opposing counsel, in this case for the opposing party and spouse, of course for the client, okay? And then it will go through when you hit create records and close towards the bottom here. Under create records and close, you will then be able to see that all of these particular fields that you're then going to turn into name screens and matter screens. You also have the ability to go into a save draft and temporarily save what you worked on. Let's say you were summoned into a conference call, then you could just go, you know, and assist in whatever way you need, and then come back to it later on. How do you come back to it later on? As long as you save the draft, just go to the intake form and just go into save the draft. And there it'll have your initial as to that you created that save draft, the date of the actual draft, and the type of intake form that it is. You can then go back in, and when you're done, you'll be able to then hit create records and close. So when you hit create records and close all the way at the bottom here, this will translate over into matter screens and name screens. The end product would look something along this line. So if I were to go to Cox Rojas, okay, and I go into my links names tab, you'll then be able to see when you fill out the intake form that someone's going to be obviously assigned, wherever you fill out as a client will show up and have a link type as a client here. The attorney, opposing attorney, the judicial, the counsel as well, and the spouse. So all this information could be, and then could be already, it's going to be done for you. That does not stop you from actually adding other names and links, so you can always do so after the intake form is created. But the intake form itself facilitates this process, doing all the linking and filling it all out in one window. So along with all the calendar events that can get already preset within a specific rule as to, you know, you're seeing in this case when this was opened back in May 25th, on that first day, someone had to meet with a client, right? And eventually the who here that you're entering, notice how I entered BD, CP, DSW, and EL in all these examples. Okay, eventually you can come back in here and modify who actually took care of that event. Who you might have listed all of them and they will be able to all see it on their calendars, but eventually only one person who met with a client, you'll be able to then modify it in this situation, okay? Because you can always double click on that event and then modify the who by just entering the initial of the person that handled it, okay? If they haven't handled it and hasn't been completed, you're going to see it in each one of these individuals as you are actually entering them under the intake form, okay? So these particular events are already within a specific rule. The rule in the example of the family law is that is a new case. So for that new case family law, someone's going to meet with a client for the first time on that same day, right? On that same day, also someone's going to open up the billing account. Maybe a day later, someone's doing the conflict of interest check, okay? And then someone did the confirmation letter the day after that. And then, of course, a week later, I should say, and then a week after that, someone took care of the draft fee contract. So these are all can be embedded within that particular intake form, and it can be handled that way. So the intake form has its advantages, as you can see. Not only are all the events can be calendared, all the linking is done, and to top it all off, it'll have a build-to link type so that you know who to send the invoice to. This will allow you to set up the matters properly so that then you can start adding notes and making them, of course, and create time tickets. You cannot create a time ticket unless you have a build-to already embedded within that particular matter. So those are the advantages of the intake form as far as the setup. It is a lot easier to do it this way as opposed to having to add the matter, add the name, link the name to the matter, and do it manually that way. Along with these intake forms, you might be able to also create those intake forms. So let's say that you did like the family law one, right? But within these fields, this, for your firm's needs, you need to add a few more fields, right? So that you can actually, when you're filling out the intake form, it would have them in place. You can actually customize the intake form as much as you would like, as far as adding more fields to the intake form, doing more linking specifically. All of that can be controlled under File, Setup, Intake Form Manager. Okay? I've mentioned before that I have different PALs, Practice Advocate Legal Solutions. As you can see from here, I have those intake forms that come along with those specific PALs. So I have the one for criminal defense that has all these intake forms. I have the one for civil litigation. I have all the ones for family law. So depending on whether you purchase these PALs or not, you're also going to have these available to you as far as the intake forms are concerned. So if you were interested in maybe looking into like the family law ones, they will have an adoption case, a custody case, a divorce case. They're all going to look slightly different, right? You can take the one that already exists and you can clone it and make slight modifications to it. Any modification that you need to do to a specific intake form, we recommend that you clone them. Why? Because that way, if we ever do upgrades or updates to any of our PALs, it would override what already exists in the original. So don't edit the original. I'd rather you clone the original and make modifications. That way, you can continue to have your intake forms that you've created and you've cloned, as opposed to getting overwritten when we do an upgrade or an update. So you don't run that risk. Okay, so just to show you really quickly, how does the form look on as far as the form manager in the back end? If I go to the divorce one, which is the one you saw, and I would hit edit, okay? I don't know if it's clear on your screens on your end, but the start of it, this is how you would, please enter information about the case. If you want to leave it as Abacus Family Law Divorce Case Intake Form, you obviously will, as the original, but you can change it here. You can change the name completely. So if you were cloned it, you can change and make your own name when it comes to the form. Okay, if you proceed to the records section, I'm going to just give you a quick comparison of what you saw. Whenever you were entering the name record, right, it was linking it as a bill to and as the client. Okay, whenever you were entering the second, there was the event section here. This is referring to, if I go to edit properties, this is referring to the what. The what is going to be that rule that we were talking about. Okay, and that it was the new case as a default value. So the new case that I showed you had, open up the file, open up the billing account, confirm the confirmation letter. That's the rule that was embedded within this intake form. At any given time, you can create your own rule and attach it to the form if you would like to do that. Okay. Going back here further out, you would have, that was the event section where you can enter the initials of the individuals. Then you had the spouse information and the names. So this is just saying that whatever name you entered, right, it was linking it as a spouse. Whatever name you entered in the third and last one, it was the opposing counsel. You remember that? So if I go back really quickly, just to show you what I'm referring to in the family law. Okay, this was the client. That was the first one. Whatever information I'm entering here will be linked as the bill to and as a client type. If I further go down, you see the opposing counsel. That was the second information of the name record that you were entering. Then going over into the opposing, into the last one, the opposing counsel, whatever information you entered would have been shown here. Okay, so that's the intake form in a nutshell. Okay, and that's really how you can, modify and customize it. You can also, if you go back into the intake form, let's say you didn't like any of the ones we offered, you do have the ability to go to the add button. You can add from a template, add from scratch, or use the default sample form. This in itself, obviously, I'm just giving you the capabilities of what you can do. That would need to be another training. You can customize these. We can make an assessment if you don't want to learn how to do it yourself. So there's different ways to approach it. One, we can make an assessment. You give us a sketch or a form exactly of everything, exactly how you want it, and we'll do it for you. Or you can, guys, after you know that you can design the intake form yourself, you can fill it around and try to do it on your own. So you do have options when it comes to the intake form. That the gist of the intake form is that it really will help you expedite the process of data entry and having to link everything properly, as well as having calendar events or having the build tools already added separately. So that is the concept of the intake form.
All right, we're going to see if we have any questions right now, and we'll try to facilitate those as best we can. Really appreciate everyone who bared with us during our first 10 or 15 minutes of technical difficulties. So let's see what we got. Let's see. A lot of I can't see the screens, as to be expected. Let's see, this one's from John Beddard. I would like to be able to complete an intake form and at the conclusion of the completion of the form have the system automatically generate a form, i.e. letter to client confirmation, our firm's retention. How do we do that?
So within the rule that you choose, you do have the ability to add a form right away. So if I were to go and show you under the rules, just give me 1 second. Under the rule that you create, and by the way, I don't know your extent or your experience with rules, but if you go to File, Setup, Rules, okay, depending on the rule that you're choosing, any one in, let's say this one, let's say an adoption case. Within that adoption case, if you wanted to fill in a form with any one of these, court search, malpractice suit, again, let's just say is any of these action items within a specific rule. Remember, the rule you can recreate, you can modify, you can make it your own. So if you needed to add a specific form when you're drafting an adoption decree, okay, you can always go into the edit section and you see that it'll say form here. So you can either add an Abacus form that you already have within your templates, within your forms or within the library, or you can go grab a form that you already created through Microsoft Word. And it's just as simple as, let's say, if you had some Abacus forms within, you can go in. This is my library. Again, let's say I just wanted to add a thank you letter, okay? As an example, as long as the form already exists, you just double click on it and it'll know to attach a form to that particular description of the event, of the what, within a specific rule. So when this comes up on your calendar, you just have to hit fill form and it'll fill in the form for you. Okay, hopefully that answered your question.
Let's see. Why is it helpful to create two links to the client record, as client and as bill to? Why not just bill to? This one's from Leonard.
Excellent question, Leonard. So the whole concept of the link types is that you'll be able to use those later on for form generation purposes. So if I go into any one of these, and when you're looking at the link names, if later on I want to add a merge field to a form that says, you need to put in the client's address. Well, if I haven't determined that Courtney Cox is my client, then it won't know to grab for any name record and say, okay, give me Courtney Cox's address for that merge field. So this type has not only to do with functionalities within, billing purposes, but also for form generation purposes. So as you're linking the names clearly to this case or type, it's just a matter of a few clicks and having the right merge fields at the right time, but also the linking has to be done properly. If you don't have anything linked as a client, well, clearly, if you have the right merge field of a client address, it won't know where to find what the client is being linked to a specific matter.
All right, thanks for that, Ben. Let's see if we can get in about 2 or 3 more questions, folks. Let's see. Can you edit or customize an intake form to enter info into custom fields in Matter screen? This one's from Kristen.
Certainly. The whole idea is that if you do want those, whatever you're creating in the intake form to ultimately be in the Matter screens, right? Because that's the whole purpose. You would have to obviously customize those fields within the Matter first. Okay, so basically if I go to Cox Rojas, and let's say in this main screen, you wanted to have, I don't know, date of birth somewhere here as the information, not date of birth, but any information that you wanted to add here, you would obviously have to add it into the intake form. Or necessarily not even have it to add to the intake form, you can just have it as part of the Matter screen and fill it in after the intake form is done. But you can have it in multiple places or the same place, or just make the modification to the screen.
All right, this next one's from Sophia. Do all the intake forms created appear on the calendar?
So as long as you are using a specific rule, right, that would have a specific, that would have those events, they can be calendared. If you don't put any names as far as the initials within that intake form, nothing, no one's going to, it'll just be blank and it won't appear on anybody's calendar. So basically what I'm saying is if you did the intake form, okay, and you didn't put anybody under the who, it will still say all the events that have been linked here, but it won't show up on anybody's calendar because you haven't assigned it to anybody.
All right, this is another one from John Better. Do we have several rate levels at the firm? Is it possible to choose a billing rate schedule at the intake form stage?
So during the intake form, not necessarily. What you'll be able to assign is to tell someone to open up the billing account. Okay? Now, by default, it'll go to the standard rate as long as you set up all the standard rates. If it's something besides the standard rate, you would then go to and you have to go into the Matter maintenance section within billing and change that standard rate to whatever specific rate set you would want to set it up under. By default, it always goes to standard automatically, but if you needed to make it something other than standard, then you would have to go into the billing application, the billing icon, the green one, and go into the Matter section, the Matter maintenance, and enter it through there. Well, this is loading up. I guess we can read up another question.
Yeah. All right. Nearing the end of our time, but let's go ahead and see if we can get 1 or 2 more. Let's see. Connie asks, how do I add a category to a matter?
So I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that. But before I even finish up that question, let me conclude what I was telling to John. So John, in here, you can go into the Matters, and then Matter section here under the maintenance, pick the matter that you just created, and within there, go to the rate section. And whatever rate level you've created, if it's standard, it'll say rate level 1, but you can have multiple rate levels, and then they'll show up in the screen as such, and they'll list the rate sets for each one of the different rate levels. I mean, they'll set up the rate, timekeeper's rate for the different rate levels that you've created. So going back to how do I add a category to a matter? So the matter, how do I modify a note to show up on a report? Okay, let me ask first, how do I add a category to a matter? If you're thinking as far as a matter to be a specific case type, so, and I understood it correctly, when you create a matter, you already, depending on the intake form that you're using, you already, in the case of the divorce, that's already the code for the divorce. So technically speaking, the case type for that particular matter would be divorce. Okay, you can have it preset where under your setup user preferences, you can always also in the appearance, hey, whenever you're adding a new name to prompt you for a class code, or whenever you're adding a new matter to prompt you for a case code. Okay, this is just your regular way of adding a particular name or a particular matter. Let me just show you what I mean by that. So if I go into my matters and I go to add, it's going to tell me pick a case code. So as far as giving it a category, as I think what you're mentioning is, I'll then be able to say, okay, well, I'm opening up a divorce case, or I'm opening up an adoption case, right? I will type adoption. You would then fill it in. If this doesn't exist, you can actually add it yourself and create your own list, right? That's why it's edit, add, edit, delete. In this instance, just hit the adoption, hit done. It'll then say adoption of the new case you want to open, and that will take you directly to a new matter screen just for adoption. Okay, but if you do it directly to the intake form, it'll know because you're doing an adoption intake form to call it and categorize it as adoption.
All right, everyone. We are at 12:45 now. We'll go ahead and to wrap things up. Go ahead and I want to thank every one of y'all for joining us today on our Free Training Friday. Again, we apologize for the technical difficulties. Thanks for sticking with us to redo or to go over our training again today. Be on the lookout for a thank you email as well as a transcript of today's recording as well as a video. Again, thanks for showing up for today, and go ahead and check out our other Free Training Friday and premium webinars on our website, abacusnext.com/webinars. You'll have a great rest of the day and a fantastic weekend.